I'm so pleased to have our special guest today, Debbie Simmons, who is the legacy architect,
Mhm.
a keynote speaker. You're a best-selling author, Debbie, and the CEO and founder of Anchor Point, a nonprofit that is really designed to really empower people and to bring. I'm sorry, Debbie. The recording went. Let's restart that because the recording started. So I feel so out of shape. Sorry, I'm just gonna take a breath. I
I'm
promise I'm a good interviewer. Okay, you're
good.
good. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's just start over here. I am so pleased to welcome Debbie Simmons, who is the legacy architect. Debbie, you're a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and CEO and founder of Anchor Point, a multi-million dollar nonprofit. And you are also the creator of the architecture of trust and the obedience engine. I'd like to know more about these frameworks that help high capacity leaders to rebuild their success. And I understand you come from a really interesting background as an engineer, and that you've been guided to this after facing some deep personal loss
Mhm.
and a health collapse. So I'd love to just invite you to share, let us know more about yourself and what has brought you to this important work, and let's just have a authentic conversation from there.
Sure. I'm super glad to be here with you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I always tell people, uh, our lives are full of journeys, that we
Mm,
don't always know because I know them because I've lived it for so long, right? But, people are always surprised by our stories. And it's so
mm,
important to share our stories because they're so encouraging. So I always tell people when you want to know my story, you kind of should buckle your seatbelt. There's lots of highs, lots of lows, kind of all that. But, for me, I get lovely titles that you gave, like a CEO of a nonprofit and an entrepreneur on a business, that of working with other CEOs. But I also get fun titles like wife of Scott and mom of 9 adopted children. And
wow.
then I get to be a lolly, a grandma to 15 grandkids. And so
Wow.
uh, life is kind of full of all those adventures. But if we look back in my journey, I think a lot of times when we're young, we kind of have these ideas of what we
Mhm.
think life's going to be like. And I remember, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a doctor. And my mom was
Mm.
like, "Why do you want to be a doctor?" And I'm like, because I took swimming lessons at the doctor's pool. His children
Oh.
taught swimming lessons, and I wanted a pool. And so this is how you get a pool is to be a doctor. And I'm like, that's what I need to be. And my mom's like, okay, well, we'll think about that. And I was probably, 6 or whatever. But I had, for me, I had wanted to be a young grandma, and
Mm.
I ended up on a long story made short, I got pregnant with quads after about 5 years of infertility.
Wow.
And the boys were born at 26 weeks and they were placed in my arms and they were loved and rocked and held until they drifted into eternity.
Wow.
And that for me was the whole experience was a life-changing experience, but especially, as we lost the boys and in the hospital, it became very clear to me that I wanted my life to have purpose because eternity mattered, life mattered. This was important, and I didn't want to have walked through this difficult thing and not have it have meaning,
Mm.
more than just the loss. And so I began a journey of trying to figure out how do I make my way in the world when this is overwhelming. And as God taught me kind of how to walk through that grief, I began to have opportunities to work with people and to help them through their grief. And then lo and behold, as my story goes, one of the things I just said to God was, "Hey, I know you're a redeemer of stories. So will you take mine and redeem it, make it worth it?" And so, this concept of
Mm.
legacy and wanting to leave legacy, but I knew that I had to live it in order to have a legacy that I
Mm.
wanted to control. I wanted to control. I wanted to make, you can fall into a legacy, whatever happens at the end of your life, but I wanted to be intentional. And so that took me on a journey of adopting the 9 children over time. And then I got this idea in my head that I should start a nonprofit. And I'm like, what? no, this isn't me. But I wanted to help families
Mm,
because families were so important to me. And so I started Anchor Point 15 plus years ago, and it impacts thousands of people. And my boy's legacy lives on through it. My legacy is
mm,
being crafted through it. Thousands of people are touched each and every year. And I get excited thinking about eternity and standing there and
mm,
still seeing people getting served. I'm like, that rocks, right? And so over the last couple of years, what we've been doing is going, okay, what else is there for me to do in
mm,
addition to doing this? And this is where the architecture of trust, and that book will be coming out in the next 8 weeks, and working with CEOs to help them understand how trust has to be built into the structure of your organization, not just the relational trust that we have, so that your organization knows how to run without always having to depend on you. And
mm,
this is my journey of learning how to work my way out of CEO eventually of Anchor Point and leave a freestanding ministry that can continue to go on. But as CEOs, we've got to work very intentionally at that. And sometimes it's hard for us to see it because we kind of get trapped in all of it. So these
mm.
are the pieces of my life that I've gotten to go through, but also get to still invest in and work on now, even though I've gotten a little older over time. So that's my journey.
I really, I mean, there's so much there we could talk about, Debbie, and a few
Mhm.
things that really stood out to me. I really appreciate how you keep referring to eternity. I think there's so much marketing and social conditioning to talk about like, you only live once, and like this fear of missing out. And when we step back and see ourselves as eternal beings, it changes um, the whole view of life, and realizing we have this wonderful relationship to cultivate with our creator, and that we can, meaningfully and intentionally create a life that I love how you frame it about living our legacy. I think that's actually the most important thing that we do as in any forms of leader, whether it's conscious parenting or leadership
Sure.
of an organization. It's living that way that we wish to be. I mean that's at the heart of Christ's teachings, right? The golden rule, and
Mhm.
seeking that way of being, which is a reflection of heaven. I would love to, I mean, and also that profound loss that no, very few would be able to comprehend, especially with four boys. That's an
Mhm.
incredible story. My goodness. And I really appreciate how you gave it an empowering meaning, working with our creator to lead you. I think that is
Mhm.
such a testament to the beauty when we can transcend our limited perspective of life and come to a new meaning. So tell us more about your ministry. And you said you're empowering thousands of people, and that is a big part of the boys' legacy. What are some transformational stories that you would like to share, or your own direct transformational experience of following the guidance to start this?
Sure. Well, let's talk about some of the stories because my journey is, no, God, I'm not doing that. And then God says, over time, I think you're going to do this, and I eventually go, okay, I'll do that. So I've gotten better over time, but usually we can be pretty confident that the thing that God calls us into is probably the thing that we sit there and go, no way. I ain't
Mm,
doing that. That's too much. That's too big. That's too everything. And God really wants to do something amazing for those
mm,
of us who will just lean in and be obedient. And it's not this didn't happen just because of Debbie's skill set. This happened because God was in it every step of the way. And
mm,
me or my staff were just obedient. And we just got to go for the ride. And so that is what is super amazing. Our ministry deals with helping families thrive. That is our big goal. And we do that in several different ways. We have a medical clinic for those who are underinsured, and then also
mm,
who are struggling with the overwhelming idea of they found out they're pregnant and they don't know what to do.
mm,
And they're struggling with choosing life, and they're just overwhelmed and distraught. And this is just a safe place for them to go to talk through all the things that are running through their head and get sound medical advice and be able to see the baby, hear the heartbeat, see if it's even a viable pregnancy at that
Mhm.
point. And then to really have an opportunity to talk about, like, where are they and what
Mhm.
are they trying to figure out? Because, all of us can get pregnant with no training and it's overwhelming, right? It doesn't matter how prepared you
Mhm.
are.
Mhm.
It's like overwhelming. And so this is just a wonderful safe space for them to kind of process,
Mhm.
um, and just go, okay, I can do this. And then we have a Hope Community Center, our Hope Family Center, and that is where we do case management with these
Mhm.
young couples and even older couples, but they're trying to figure their way. And we just walk alongside of them. We talk about, like, okay, what's your plan? Have you thought about a doctor? Have you thought about, like, how you're going to provide? Have you thought about, like, resources? Have you thought about, have you got to medicate? Whatever it is, we just kind of help walk them through it, because we always need wise people kind of helping us, not doing it for us, but challenging us to rise up and
Mhm.
begin to do the things that we need to do. And so we do that with baby mom, baby dad, and grandparents, and whoever is in the story that we get to go along those journeys with. And then we have a maternity home for young girls who are homeless and pregnant, and we get to work with them 24/7. And so what does
Wow.
it take for us to get you to a place where you can sustain yourself and your baby and be a productive, citizen of our world, and be good and be stable, and whether it's a schooling issue, whether it's a housing issue, whether it's material assistance, all of those things. And then we do our Hope Community initiatives, which are our education and training that we do for families. We run therapeutic camps for families who've adopted kids with trauma backgrounds that don't quite know what to do with those kiddos, and they're trying to figure their way.
Mhm.
And then we run support groups for people who have struggled with abortion, who've struggled with sexual abuse, who struggle with just trauma in general, and have never been able to walk in a confidential, safe place through healing. And so it's like, how do we get you healthy so that
Mhm.
you can be a giver and not be stuck? And I will just tell you, I have seen numerous stories, thousands of stories of individuals who've come to us just literally overwhelmed and burdened by the thought of, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. I think of one girl that she was a waitress and ended up pregnant, and
Mhm.
she was going to choose life for her child. And all of a sudden, she was overwhelmed because her car had broken down. She couldn't get to her job. She couldn't get to finish school. She had been doing everything right. And now she had these overarching circumstances that she didn't have any family to turn to, and baby daddy wasn't in the picture for whatever reason. And so now she's feeling all this pressure, and I can't figure my way. And so working with her to go, okay, let's look for resources. Let's figure out the car repair. Let's figure out this. And we have resources that we bring to bear, but also there are community resources, there are state resources that they just don't know how to tap into. And
Mhm.
so we were able to walk her through all of that, and to ultimately get her back to South Carolina, where family was that could walk alongside of her. And now she has a beautiful baby. This has been several years. She's doing really good. And I could just tell you story after story after
Mhm.
story of like that. And then, on our therapeutic camps, we have families that come, and they have kids that are just struggling and they don't know what to do. Well, we bring the parents to camp too, and we work with the parents. And oftentimes I found the parents are just, they have their own kind of trauma backgrounds
Mhm.
that they've never dealt with. And all this kid is doing is hitting all their trauma buttons. And so the parents are going nuts, then the kid goes nuts again, and then it's a terrible whirlwind. And so what we began to do this last year, this is every year, but last year we had this dad and this son, and the dad's deepest desire at the beginning of camp was, I just want to be able to do stuff with my kid the way that I did with my dad. And this kid is a 10-year-old boy who had, the parents had adopted two younger children. It was a very traumatic situation. This young boy, over 4 years, began to internalize all of his struggle,
Mhm.
and now was, exploding and acting out because he didn't know a way to use his voice or to be able to be heard and everything like that. At the end of the camp, I asked that little boy, I said, if you could do anything with your dad, what would you want to do? And he said, I want to go bike riding or
Mm,
camping. And he had like three or four things. And do you know, it was almost mirror to what his dad had desired at the
mm,
beginning. And so it was this ability to help this kid use his words to get his needs met so he didn't have to act out, but to also teach the parents how to understand that and then how to connect the dad and the boy back together to be successful. And as he went into his school last year, he got an award for good behavior. He got all kinds of wonderful things that he is doing so much better in. But I'm going, all of that, all of those stories boil down to being able to give hope
mm.
when there's
Wow.
none, or it doesn't seem like there is. But I'm like going, that's what we need to be is hope
Mm,
givers,
mm,
encouragers, not do it for you, do it with you. And to just say, we can do this next step.
mm.
And so that's what we get to do on a daily basis. And it's an absolute joy and privilege to be able to do that.
Wow. Well, you're such a light, and I see what you mean about living legacy, Debbie. I mean, so much of what you said is speaks to my heart because those intergenerational connections are so important for really bringing a healthy family. It's the foundation of a healthy community, and a healthy community, I think, is the foundation of a healthy world. And I was telling you before we started on the show, I feel like really the heart of every teacher who's come to the world. And I I am a student of the Christ way. I believe that however we refer to him, Jesus or Yeshua or Isa, he has many ways that we refer to him in different cultural aspects. He showed us one of the most profound ways of being in the world. And I feel like you're a real demonstration of that. So thank you for being a light in our world. I see the joy emanating from you. And a big part of our mission here at Light Our Vision is to connect conscious bridges between community centers, between individuals and parents, conscious parents who, there's a lot of confusion out there. We talked a little bit before the show, like there's a buzz about a trust recession, especially impacting entrepreneurs. And I feel like a lot of people have been burned, especially from COVID. There's a lot of distrust in different systems and levels. And yet, when you talk about hope, you talk about places to go and to access resources. We do live in an abundant world. There are resources available, but that access piece is really at the heart of so much of the dysfunction. It's not that there's not
Mhm.
enough food in the world, it's really that the systems and the access of those resources are often, there's not a connection there. So I really appreciate you being a leader and helping that to take shape in your local area. I forgot to ask you at the beginning of the show, can you let our audience know where you are in the world? So if they're listening, they hear that they can reach out to you?
We're in the small, small town of Houston, Texas.
Small town indeed.
Yeah, 8 billion. It's
That's
really small.
that must have been why I had my different background. I could have a normal
Well, that's interesting because my husband works for NASA and he
oh,
trains the
that's funny.
astronauts. So isn't that
Oh,
funny?
that's hilarious.
I'm like, this is home. It's good.
Well, it's interesting that what's it called? Is it the observer effect when astronauts see Mother Earth from the distance and realize how sacred and interconnected and also fragile our world is in comparison
Sure.
to the cosmos. It gives that feeling of oneness, and that and I feel like that's at the heart of the teachings of brotherly and sisterly love that really is the wellspring of any religion that's rooted in truth, any spiritual faith that has that understanding that we are you know part of this interconnection of life, and we have a responsibility to stewardship as caring neighbors of one another. So I mean, I know you deal with founders also. You also help, not only do you run these nonprofit organizations, you also help with the capacity development of leaders. I would love to hear from, even for my own knowing, like sometimes these missions that we're given by our creator are very
Big.
loud and big, and I feel like I've been obsessed about world enlightenment in ways that I've literally seen miracles made manifest in front of my eyes, Debbie, and I've receive messages from angelic beings that I'm here to help build these centers around the world that are supposed to help people. I still don't really, comprehend exactly what that means, but I've been guided. When I look back, I can see all these steps. Like clearly, I'm being prepared for something. I mentioned a
Mhm.
little bit about like Let Her Vision, and now we're building co-creative coherence circles to help people synergize their soul gifts. Because I feel like one of the things that I notice, especially in the coaching world and in a lot of institutions, I come from like public education. I've taught in Indigenous wellness and program development and stuff. And I see a lot of disconnect, right? It's like you go into a space, you get knowledge, you get information that doesn't always translate to knowledge. And then you go and everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And for a founder to be able to establish trust within an organization so it becomes a part of the living ecosystem, part of the values of that expression and that service, what are some key principles that you guide in that?
Yeah, so one thing is I would say this is always people go, "How did you build a nonprofit?" I'm going, "I don't really know how I did it. I just did it." But I will tell you this, I've always done this, is it's always like, it doesn't matter what I face or what I think I'm called to do. This concept of just take the next best step. Take
Mm,
the next best one you can think of, not the next right step, the
mm,
next best step.
I love that.
Because and this is the way I worked through grief. This is the way I kind of approach life is that, I only know so much. Okay. I can look back and I can pick up regret and shame. I can look forward and I can pick up anxiety and worry and overwhelm, and that will shut me down. Or I can just stay present and go, okay, what is it that I can do right now?
Mm,
Whether it's in a business or whether it's as a mom or whether it's just as a person, what's the next best thing I can do? And then I need to do it. Because when I do it and when I take a step out of faith and obedience, then God shines the light on what the next step should be.
mm,
Okay. So God is looking for us to move toward these things that we feel called to and with open hands. And when I have open hands, that means I'm open to the door shutting and me having to move over this way or change this way or being pointed slightly differently. I don't hold too tightly. So
mm,
I knew when this dream of Anchor Point was there, we would just pray and say, okay, God, you show us what to do. And we would begin to do it, and then the next thing would come up. And it's like, oh, we should do that. Then, let's add that in and let's do this in. And then before you knew it, now I've got this huge organization impacting thousands, and we're so blessed. And I'm like looking at it going, how in the world did I get here? And then how in the world, what's the next big step? Right. And
wow.
so that is, I think, a lot of how the entrepreneurial spirit works too in general is
Mm,
we just do it. And then the reason I do the stuff that I do with the architecture of trust and everything is because what I've learned is that a lot of my hustle and control and just my ability to go after things tenaciously is what has gotten us here,
mm,
but it cannot take us to the next level.
mm,
And if we want to build something that lives outside of me, then we've got to create the structure in the organization, rise up the leader, raise up the leaders so that they can function without me having to drive everything. Doesn't mean I'm not still, equally involved. But if they don't trust the system,
mm,
then they themselves will hesitate. So that we talk about three pillars: leadership alignment, decision clarity,
mm,
and execution reliability.
mm,
So your organization, those three things have to be solid. Like for instance, any CEO I would ask, I would say, hey, if you were to leave for 30 days, would your organization still move and operate the way that you would like it done while you're gone? And
mm.
almost all of them go, nope, not for 30 days. And that just means we have a structure problem. Do you see what I'm
Mm,
saying? Because it's
yeah.
still so heavily dependent on me, the CEO, and it can't live past me if that's the case. And so we have to help these CEOs realize you have to create this structure because naturally everything moves toward chaos.
Mm,
Okay. And so if we don't fight hard for it, then our people are not going to feel free and feel empowered to do the things that they need to do. They'll hesitate or they'll come to you for some. I always like to say, do you ever feel like it always ends up on your desk? And I'm like, why is that on my desk? Why did someone else not make that choice? Do you know
mm,
what I'm saying? Why do they not feel empowered? And so I think for us, this is so important as leaders to understand because we do want to leave legacies and we do want to have impact and we do want to be able to retire one day, right? I mean, these are all good things because we have other things that we can go and accomplish and do. And so a lot of it, when I'm working with CEOs, there's two things that happen. One is we got to work on the business and we got to work on it a lot. But also, what happens is sometimes because I'm a control and hustle girl, what do I wanna do is I'm trying to set up my business. I wanna get back in there and control it, and so I gotta grow, right? I gotta
mm,
I gotta work on those things that are saying, "Why do I feel like I gotta control?" So I have to learn to release some things
mhm,
and to empower the people and be okay in that crazy, messy middle,
mhm,
um, and learning to let go. That's the harder work for me, but most CEOs, we have to do that type of thing because this has just been natural and default and it seemed like the right thing, but it won't get us to the next level. And so that's
mm.
what we spend our time doing. And the most interesting thing is when we get it right for the CEO, it's unnerving. And it's unnerving. You know why? Because it's so quiet. And you're like, "W what's happening? What's going on?" Because everything is working. But the truth of the matter is when it becomes quiet again,
Mm,
you go, "It feels like it used to. And
mm,
now I can breathe, and now I can dream."
mm,
And when I can dream, I can do the next thing, right? And
mm,
so we're so bogged down and our structure's so weak and dependent on us to fill the gaps that that is why the architecture of trust is so important
mm, mm.
in what we're doing nowadays and helping us go to the next level.
I love so much what you shared, Debbie. At one point, I wanted to say, Houston, we have a solution.
Yeah, yeah, I love
Right?
it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's interesting too. So, I didn't share this with you, but in my early 20s, Christ actually appeared to me in the forest as a being of pure light. And it was after asking a series of questions in nature, and I would have described myself like a seeker, but not coming from a very secular family. And I was looking for truth through the lens of science, and I do believe that science is the language, the modern language of mysticism, true science, anyways. And I feel like all the true science leads us back to inspiration. And some of the most brilliant scientific minds in the world are, all point back to the first cause, which we know as our creator, right? The creator of
Mhm.
the universe is not just the universe itself, but it's there's a loving intelligence there. Anyways, when Christ appeared to me, I I knew that it was to show me that there was beyond what I could, fully comprehend and see with my senses in a normal way. And then that led me to working with indigenous people, learning from many elders, and then eventually I found the Christ letters, and in them he talks about, his experience of becoming enlightened and his teachings, and it does challenge some of the Christian dogma, but I find that it answered a lot of my questions that I had from my direct experience, at least. But one of the things why I'm bringing this up for you is because in his guidelines for us to come together from all traditions, all walks of life, all faiths, and everything to really build a more enlightened world. He shares exactly the the guidance that you shared about turning to God to lead each step and to take that next best step. And he says, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to for you to trust your own good judgment, but to work hand in hand with this with our divine creator to to bring it into our hearts and minds to have that lead. And when I see you helping an organization find that harmony, I can see everyone feeling and coming into more of a sense of their mastery and understanding that they have a working relationship with God, and that it's something that can guide us all. And I think it can help us even transcend these traditional hierarchical structures where everyone feels more more empowered to rise and to grow. And
Mhm.
of course, these structures have their place, but I really see a world where, because I mean, so part of the traditional way, I think, you know, if we're always having to go to an outside source for all of our needs to be met, then we're missing something important. And I feel like Christ, at least in my understanding of his teachings, was always pointing us to our living Creator within us, and to be able to trust that guidance. So I love your discernment there. It's not the next right step, because so many people can get caught in that analysis paralysis, perfectionism, but the next
Oh,
best step.
yeah.
It's a great motto. I really appreciate it. And I see how you've been able to rise into flourishing as a leader and a developer of leaders. So,
Yeah.
and it's so important in this day and age. So, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and I think one of the, most interesting things is, if you just want, like, a personal application on trust, this is a fun one, is,
Mm,
we all say that we trust something, okay? So I will say, "I trust God," right? Okay, this would just be my default. Of course I trust God, okay? The way we know, both in a business and in us individually, as what we truly trust is when the pressure comes up, what comes out, okay?
mm,
And in me, when I will tell you, I like when the pressure goes up, a lot of times I won't first trust God. The pressure will reveal that I'm going to control and hustle.
mm,
Right? And that's my default mechanism. And so my default mechanism is not bad. It's just not where I want to be. It's not fully aligned with what I say, right? And so I've got to disconnect. But what it is my way of dealing with the world that I have learned over
mm,
time to help me survive.
yeah,
So think about it. Why do I, Debbie, feel like I need to control things?
mm,
Well, I already told you I lost my boys. I
mm,
totally couldn't control that, right? So in order to make my way in the world, I'm like, I want to make sure I can get this under control,
mm,
right? Because I don't want to experience anything like that again. Well, that is my Debbie taking over instead of allowing God to
yeah,
walk me through a situation, right? And so I like to tell people that, hey, this is just an indicator of where you sit. And so, what you need to do as a company, you need to make adjustments, adjust structure, do different things, get a different process in place, and then go about your business. And guess what? The pressure will go up, and let's see what the structure does it hold, right? And we'll make adjustments. As an individual, I go, okay, God, help me work on wherever my woundedness is or my healing that I need because I'm feeling like I have to be responsible for this or
mhm,
I have to
mhm,
control it. And the truth of the matter is I don't. And
mhm,
usually I have to surrender something, right?
mhm,
Surrender
mhm,
my way
mhm,
for his way. And when I learn to like self reflect on that and work through that through scripture and through a prayer and different things like that, then I personally get to a new place. Life goes on. The next situation comes, the pressure rises,
mhm,
and I behave differently. And because I am learning and growing, this is about our journey of life or our journey as a business, but our journey of life as individuals. And the more I can grow in those things and, really align with the fact that I say I trust God. Well, what exactly does that mean? Do you know
mhm,
what I'm saying? And he is going to grow us in that as we continue to lean in and he will teach us a ton of things. Like it was so funny. And my grandkids are here, like we were talking about earlier, and I was doing my Devo this morning, and for whatever reason, God placed the song. Rock the boat, don't tip the boat over. I mean, this is an old song. I don't remember any songs like this. And I'm like, why do I have that song? And it's a story about a relationship, but God was like, this is our story and
mhm,
I need you in the boat, and the boat may rock, but I got you, right? And so, I was
mhm.
teaching the grandkids this morning, and they're going around rocking the boat, all singing, today. But I'm going, what a beautiful picture, right? That he's got it under
Yeah,
control. Even though my boat is kinda rocking, I can still
yeah,
trust him, but I thought, what a sweet picture to help me visually remember that I can trust him in these
Yeah.
situations and that he's got me. And so I think that's what our journey is about. And the more we get that
Mhm.
right, the better we are as an individual, the better we are as a society, because the number one indicator that a person is falling more and more in love with Jesus is how other centered they become. And
Mm.
that is what we need to be about, right? And if we did that, we would certainly be able to get along better, and we certainly would be able to make a bigger impact together because we'd be able to partner and come alongside each other in ways that maybe we've never experienced before.
Yeah, well, those certainly were his teachings, right? Not only just to treat others like we want to be treated, but to treat others like ourselves. And I feel like for a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are in that hustle culture, a lot of what I heard and have witnessed and also experienced in ways is we can also leave ourselves out of the picture and not include ourselves in that love, right? And it can be a challenge. I mean, especially in corporate business environments, people wear stress like a badge, right? Debbie, you must deal with some CEOs that are like almost proud of how much stress they're carrying, how many responsibilities. And so this idea of like surrendering control and like letting go of some of these chains and giving it to God to handle, it can almost feel impossible to a lot of them, I would imagine. And so, what are some ways that you kind of evoke that level of trust? Is it a perception shift and just like getting people to recognize that they like look if you look at your journey, you've been cared for all along the way, even though you thought things were possible, or is it developing a skill set? Maybe it's a combination of all these things, probably depending on the individual.
Yeah.
What do you, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, for me, when I think about it, about 5 years ago, this has been well, it's been in probably my whole life journey, but in particular, about 5 or 6 years ago, I, shut a truck door on my leg and I got an injury that
Mm.
got infected and they wanted to put me in the hospital and it really should have killed me. I mean, it just should have killed me. I couldn't get it to heal. And you know why that was? It's because I had such a high stress load and I had lived in, I always like to call it not PTSD. I just lived in TSD, traumatic stress disorder, all the time. And you got to think about it. Was, I am a mom of 9
Mhm.
kids that have trauma backgrounds, and they are. It can be intense when they were growing
Mhm.
up, and we're
Imagine.
dealing with stuff that they had, and helping them to get healing and do all this stuff. Not only that, 9 is just a lot, and so that was intense. I always had a full time job. I was always, at that point, I was running prison ministry for Chuck Colson across 4 states. And so I had a high
Wow.
level ministry opportunity. And then God's like, start Anchor Point. And I'm like, dude, I'm busy. I'm like, I'm really busy. I'm doing ministry full time. I have a mission field at my house. And he's like, you can do this. And so I started Anchor Point and I hustle and I control and I do all those things. So I'm just piling on, piling on, piling on. COVID comes. And I am not taking care of myself nutritionally and physically as much as I should. And I have a staff person that's at home. And so I'm covering her position plus my position, plus I have kids, plus now I
Mm.
got grandkids. The list just goes on and on. Anybody could look at my life and say, you have a little stress. You have a little bit of a challenge. You have a high intensity life. I would just tell you that feels normal.
Mm.
Okay, it's not normal, and I didn't realize how intense it was, and I've always been an overachiever, so it wasn't like bad, and you know what? The world, celebrates my control and hustle, right?
Mhm.
Encourages
Mhm.
me to do more of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the deal is that my organization and me can only survive when I could show up at 100%. So when
Right.
I got that injury, I couldn't show up at 100%.
Mm.
So what did it quickly revealed? It revealed where our structure was really weak and where we
Mhm.
were overly dependent on me. That took me over 9 months to get healed. Okay, that's a long time to kind of be in and out of action, trying to run and do as many things as I did. But what it dawned on me was that we do not realize how much internal stress we have, how much external stress comes at us, and
Mm,
we're trying to deal with all that, and I'm trying to hold tightly and control all that. So the injury slowed me down enough to say, you need to think through this, because the truth of the matter is, you told me a long time ago you wanted to be a young grandma, and yet you're in a situation now where you might not get to stay
mm,
if you don't change some things. And so I had to start looking really hard at like what I was doing with my life, as far as time, as far as how I invested it, what I ate, how much I exercise, all these things. And I've spent the last 6 months, 6 years really trying to realign all that, because I want to be here for the long term, because I want to be here for my grandkids,
yeah.
because I want to make Anchor Point successful past me, because I want to help others figure this out too. And so what I tell people is I go, you know what? I didn't even realize I was like that frog that got thrown in the water, and then the water gets heated up and they never know that it's changing, right?
Hmm.
Okay. And they never jump out. And I'm like going, I didn't even realize it until it took something tragic for me to be able to be aware of it. And so I tell people, why don't you just learn from my story and skip all that and realize that we've got to put some things around our lives that are healthy boundaries for us, to learn how to thrive ourselves so that we can do that. But I go, that's all a journey. But are we overstressed as a society? Yes. Do we have our phones at our hands and can get access and overwhelm so easily that we have to make sure we build that rhythm that gives us a chance to, have a quiet time, or make sure that we're getting exercise in, or doing the things that, so it's just so important, because if we don't, we just don't even realize what we're sitting in, and we will shorten our lives, or our businesses will not survive past us. And that's not what we want. So
Yeah.
that for me has been the biggest learning over the last, 6 years of really coming to terms with that as I head into what are our golden years, my
Hmm.
golden years. So that for me is the biggest thing is I just wasn't even, I wasn't even aware of
Yeah.
how bad it was.
I love that one of my favorite acronyms is GOLD, good, orderly, loving direction. And it sounds
Mm,
like your journey. And I love how, I think this is the role of leaders too, is to impart wisdom through stories and not just to you know to lead from service, but also to care for ourselves along the way, because that also, we lead by example and people pick on that. Because if you're creating an organization that's rooted in hustle culture and pushing things, and
mhm,
everyone else is going to feel like they have to do that too, and it creates and that also attracts those kind of customers who are feeling that energy, and it all translates. And yeah, like you're saying, it's not sustainable in the long term. And if we're thinking, like you said at the beginning of the show, about eternity, well, what kind of world are we perpetuating through those generations that our children are going to inhabit? And I feel like we're in a really interesting time as well. I'd love to hear, I mean, about your perspective, because we're in a time of like really accelerated change. And I think that has been kind of the precursor to a lot of the challenges with trust and things that we're seeing emerging. And people are probably more afraid because there's more uncertainty that they perceive, um, especially with emergent technologies. I talk a lot about how important it is to rise in our spiritual maturity to meet some of these things, because they're going to demand different levels of responsibility, like the questions of AI. And we have technologies where, like you said, people are on their devices all the time. Now we're having, like, VR and XR. People are going to immersive worlds. There's all these basically convergent technologies. What would you say to like a founder who's maybe just starting something, or is feeling the pressure of these changes, and how important it is to stay rooted in that deeper eternal relationship?
That is a wonderful question because you know what? I feel that pressure all the time. So, and I mean, I'm like going, I can't even figure out how to operate my TV anymore. I'm like, I don't know. And then it's supposed to be super smart, and I think it's the dumbest thing ever because I can't get to the show I need to. But I will tell you this is that you are so right with the pressures that we feel and the pressure to produce and all these different things. And just even trying to keep up with technology is like overwhelming. And I will tell you what God's been doing with me. God's been doing with me is God has been requiring me to move slower,
Mhm.
slow down, to make sure that I am spending time in his word, that I am learning, that I am staying grounded. And I mean, I'll be
Mm.
sitting there some mornings and I'm like, I've got things to do. And he's like, I want you to sit just a little while longer. And I'm like, okay. And it's so sweet that time, but still I'm going, okay, I got these things to do. So I'm like, okay, God, you order my day. You teach me
Mhm.
what it is that I'm supposed to be doing and lead me through the day because I feel like there's all these things. But he's like, no, I need you to slow down. I need you to, really focus on calming yourself down and being able to be in all of these challenging
Mhm.
situations that I'm going to allow you to be in today. And, when I approach the day that way, my day goes very differently. My day, even if I have because I'm a task person, I'm a doer person, but if I have a person that comes in my office, it's an interruption, and I have set myself up well that morning. When that interruption comes, I am able to still see that person and to go, okay, God, what are we up to? Why is this person interrupting me? Because I thought what I was doing, I needed to get done and I felt the pressure to get done. But
Mhm.
you've brought this person to me. So there must be something. So I want to be on the lookout for that because
Mhm.
I believe the most powerful thing that we have to offer, even amidst all of this stuff, is the personal touch that we have and the
Mhm.
ability to plant positive seeds in a person's life. And I always like to say to leave a bridge to Jesus. And so, what is it that I can do in my time with you to serve you, to listen to you, to redirect you, to refocus, whatever I need to do for that interruption and,
Mhm.
help you go in your merry little way. But I don't miss things.
Mhm.
Right? And I just think even simple things like when the grandkids and I go walking, I'm like, "Okay, what are we gonna look for today that God made?"
Mhm.
And they'll go, "Oh, he made the tree. He made this. He made that." And I'm going, "Yeah, that's so cool." And I said, "And I see something else he made." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "You." And so just a matter of perspective, right?
Yeah.
But I go, the human touch in my mind never gets replaced.
Mhm. Mhm.
And human empathy for one another and being able to see the best in others and pull that out of them um, is our gift that
Mhm.
we have to give because that will if I can do that with CEOs, if I can do that with my grandkids, if I can do that with my friends and my employees, then I will give a blessing to the world because all of these people will be able to live out of their giftedness.
Yeah.
And the ripple effect of that will change everything. So,
Yeah. I love your answer, and that human touch I think is everything. And it's a very important reminder whether you're a parent being present with your child or leading an organization and really making sure that you're in that moment and bringing your full self and not getting lost in all the doingness and the future planning and like you said, anxiety in the future or shame and guilt in the past. It's so easy because the ego can easily like just slip us into those places, right? And one of the things that I really love that he says in the letters is that every loving thought and action actually plants a seed to creating an era of love and peace. And that to me, I feel like what you're saying is really important to remember that. In terms of ordering your steps, you mentioned, obedience several times, and I feel like, especially in the West, we have certain perspectives of that. There might be some resistance, like, like we live in a highly individualized society. There's a lot of self-will. And from what I understand, it's our self that causes all the barriers, to be able to hear our creator and that we create our messes and then we have to deal with them. What would you say? Because I mean, on one hand, we're told to obey these like institutions, other authorities outside of us, things like this, but we're not often taught to be, obedient to that conversation that you've been talking about this whole time is your direct conversation with God.
Mhm.
What would you say to that term of obedience and how important it is to create a harmonious life, Debbie?
What I haven't been able to get away with is in scripture, it's very clear. Jesus says, if you love me, you will obey me. I'm like, dang, that's so clear. There's no wavering in that. And then I'm like, okay, what does obedience look like? And obedience looks like, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. There's another verse of the Bible that says, no whining and complaining. That gets me all the time. And so I'm going, the reason a lot of times that we don't maybe hear God is because he's already given us 66 love letters that we don't bother to read. And he's like, read my word, do it. And I'm like, okay, I can't seem to get past this obey word. And if the obey word is there, it generally means I need humility and I need surrender in my life. And I can't get past those words either. And I will tell you, when I look at employees that are no longer at anger point, it's because humility and surrender most of the time wasn't there.
Hmm.
Or with my grandchildren or my children, it was usually humility and surrender that got you in trouble and you weren't obeying. And so I go, to me, it's just black and white. And my goal is always to figure out how to get in alignment with that. Because if I am in alignment with that, he can do a lot of things with me.
Hmm.
And I figured out while I held my kids as they died that I couldn't do it by myself. And this is the journey of learning to do that right with him
Hmm.
more. And when we understand that obedience actually leads to this beautiful place of freedom and don't
Hmm.
see it as a constraint, because the truth of the matter is, Jesus says to us, come on, follow me. It's going to be great. It's going to have
Hmm.
lots of highs. It's going to be really hard, but it's going to really be good. And we just are like, it looks pretty good right here. I like my house. I like, and he's going, no, this is life. This is where it is. Come on, follow me. And
Yeah.
I found that journey worth it.
Hmm.
And so where I used to hesitate before, I'm like, okay, I say yes before you even tell me because I don't want to know all the details. Just tell me the next best step. But I found it to be the best journey, even when it was hard, even
Hmm.
when it was really, really hard, it was still the best place to be. And I think
Yeah.
that is it for me, is it's pretty clear in scripture. And I go, okay, well, I can argue that, but it's still pretty clear in the end.
Yeah. Well, your message about slowing down is something that I've heard echoed in a lot of
Mhm.
elders that I've met in different circles, and it's part of the times. It's like when things are speeding up, it's actually important that we do slow down, become more conscious about what we're doing, and I feel like that living voice is available to all of us in whatever forms that it takes based on the person's faith, but it's available. And I really appreciate your your witnessing and sharing your journey and how it's led you to more and more of this surrender in your life and the impacts that you are having speak for themselves, Debbie. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people find you? How can they contribute to what you're doing, or add value, get involved, or even benefit from some of the services that you provide? What's the best way of connecting with you?
So if they want to learn more about Anchor Point and what we do and maybe be on the prayer team or whatever with that, it's anchorpoint.us. And you can find out all the services. So if you know someone who needs something, we'd love to walk alongside them. That would be a true pleasure for us. And then for me personally, you can check out thedebbie.simmons.com. That tells you a lot about me, what I do, speaking, all those kinds of things. In addition to that, they can also look, if they would like, my book, The Heart of Legacy, which talks about how to be a focused, faithful, and fearless person. Is a wonderful next step, maybe for some people, that they can get for free at
Wonderful.
theheartoflegacy.com. Yeah.
Oh, that's
So love to
wonderful.
bless them with that.
Heartoflegacy.org, you said .org?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's wonderful. So much that you've accomplished and are sharing with the world. Thank you for being a light in the world, Debbie. And I love asking this question to our inspiring guests. If you had a magic megaphone and could talk to the whole world at once and everyone could hear you, what would you
Mhm.
share with everyone?
I would talk about the next best step, but I would also say that no matter where you sit today, that whether it's hard, whether it's easy, whatever, that when Daddy God looks at you, he smiles and he is pleased and he is drawing you to him. So I would say lean in and know that even if today is hard, the sun comes up tomorrow and there's a chance to do it again. And we got this. So that's what I would say.
That's wonderful. Thank you for such a profound message and for all that you do, and to your teams as well that support you and your wonderful children of 9 and
Yeah.
grandchildren of 15. God bless you all, Debbie, and I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we sign off for
No,
today?
my pleasure. And if there's anything that we can do, we always love to bless and to see how we can walk alongside people. So it'd be my privilege.
Oh. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. Well, I'd love to connect with you as well, and I'd love to invite our daughter, Luciana, to have to say thanks for watching, everyone. So there'll be an outro video that we have there, and thanks to all our listeners for listening. Feel free to reach out to either us at the Love Pod or to Debbie directly. And thanks again for Anchor Point and to all the people that are benefit from you. I know you're creating a beautiful legacy, so thank you very much.